probably still smell like lake water.
All right, and I hope that we can see everybody and everything.
Maybe we should stop it after 5 minutes. That way, like in case it hasn't been doing, we can split it up into 2 parts.
Okay, that would work. Okay, so Bulgaria. First question I have for you is, why did you choose Bulgaria?
Well, the teacher said, hey, think of a developing country or a third world country, and, pick one that you would be interested in learning more about. And, I probably everyone was going for, the really poor African countries that are going through a lot of turmoil.
Yeah.
But I had always heard about Bulgaria, that it was the poorest country in Europe. And that had always surprised me because, Europe is, it's right up there with, the USA. It's super, they've been doing really well. And, I just wondered, how can that happen?
Okay, so where exactly is Bulgaria again?
Bulgaria is in Europe, and it is actually right next door to, it's between, it's actually bordering a bunch of different countries. One of them, which is Russia, the other is Ukraine. It's got 2 more that are also really impoverished countries, but I don't believe they're actually part of Europe. So it is kind of on the border of Europe and everything else. So.
Okay. And you said that it's the poorest country. How is that? Were you able to learn that? Or
in class we went over the, what's it called again? Global Development Goals, and there are 8 goals that sort of look at where a country is, and it's like stuff like poverty, maternal health, child mortality, education, and naturally to say, if they're low in education or low poverty, then they're worse off doing. And Bulgaria is usually ranked, way lower compared to all of Europe. And it's actually doing much better than, countries like Madagascar and Benin. But for Europe, it's just Europe is, hey, pretty good.
Yeah.
And then, there's Bulgaria. And even at its worst, Bulgaria is still doing much better than many of the other developing countries. So it's just kind of strange that it's the worst of Europe, yet compared to others, it's still much better.
That is very interesting. So how would you say that it's much better? Like, what are the aspects that makes Bulgaria so much worse than the other countries in Europe, but yet so much better than the little Kenya or something like that?
Well, those take into account the development goals, and which is fine because I actually have to talk about all 8 of them and tell you about them. But those actually answer that. For instance, the first of the global development goal is eradicate extreme poverty and hunger. And naturally to say that's number 1 because, you can't have a healthy country if people are starving and if people can't support themselves. That is the single most, that's the root of everything.
Yeah.
And Bulgaria is extremely impoverished. I believe the margin was about, I think less than a third of the entire country has gone through some kind of poverty. It may not all be extreme poverty, but... And a lot of that has to do with 2 things, and the big one is there's actually an influx of Roma people, and a lot of people know the term gypsy, and that's sort of what they are, although I do hear that's derogatory these days. There's a lot of people just immigrating into Bulgaria. They're leaving Russia, they're leaving lots of places, and then you've also got refugees from Syria. There's a lot of unrest in Syria, and just all the Syrians are trying to get away because of the bombings in Syria. And of course, when you have people just uprooted from their homes and their lives, especially refugees, they don't have any money, so they're living on the streets in tents. And of course, people are trying to support them, and the money's going there. And that adds in a lot of poverty and to a lot of hunger.
So not only is the country struggling to take care of itself, but because so many refugees are coming in, it's amplifying everything.
Even before the refugees, like 60s and 80s, it was very, very low in income. But now, this is just putting even more strain on it. And, people are doing their best. They've set up camps. They donate a lot to the refugees and whatnot. But, the fact of the matter is they're very unprepared to take on that kind of burden. And it's even worse because Russia isn't the nicest neighbor. And recently, within the last 5 years, there was this crisis where Russia completely cut off the gas, sending the gas to Bulgaria. And as you know, gas powers so much heat, electricity, temperature, and it's a big problem, especially because now, like I said, they're also neighbors with Ukraine, and Russia and Ukraine have been going at it just recently, the last year.
Oh man, they're stuck in the middle.
Mm-hmm. And so the next development goal is education, and that's also a big thing. I mean, so right after hunger and poverty, if a country isn't educating itself, nobody can get better jobs. No one can better themselves or the areas they're in. And education is actually not so bad, but it's nowhere near America or the rest of Europe, and that's the problem. And again, the problem is because a lot of the Roma children and a lot of the refugees don't go to school. Like I read a report that the Roma children, actually the girls, are usually married off or sent away to be married around 10. So the girls usually leave school way before, and then they say they don't want the boys going because for some reason Roma children get snatched easily, and I suppose that's because the parents don't have enough money to do anything about it, and I'm not sure where the children go, but it can't be good. So that's another thing. Education is really difficult. The next one's gender equality, and that's third. Now we're getting into it's not vital, but you do need this to happen if you're going to have a civilized, well-doing country, and gender equality is a major part of that. Gender equality, luckily in Bulgaria, is doing very well. I mean, women aren't thought of second-class citizens. The only problem is that, again, a lot of the big, well-paying jobs are male-centered, and a lot of the teaching, hospital, schooling, food preparation goes to women. But there are women that, rise above and get jobs. It's a little rarer, but the fact that there's no stigma towards women, except perhaps traditional, women aspire to be that. They're doing very well in that, and that's nice.
Okay, so I got a question with that one. You said that the Roma children, especially the girls, are generally married by 10 or around
The families
there.
decide the marriages, and they pretty much just send them off to marry.
So how does that affect their lives in the future? Are they able to have a job? Because you said that they leave school early, so I don't foresee them having a job, and so it's just...
Well, the Roma culture, from what I read, is very traditional, and they don't really... They sort of, even when they have money, the Roma culture kind of lives outside of society a little bit. You won't see them go work at McDonald's or anything like that. The women, as far as I can tell, are homebodies. They stay at home. They're encouraged to cook, take care of the children, take care of the husband, clean, keep house. Especially in the Roma culture, they're not encouraged to go pursue careers or get educations.
Okay, so they're sort of like the Amish for America?
Very similar.
Okay.
Child mortality is fourth. Okay, so child mortality, basically it's a shame when children die, but however, if you look at how many children die, this is a big clue to how well the country's doing. Because what affects how many children die is how much money the families have, whether or not they're nourished and well fed, the health care, whether or not the country's educated enough to take care of children, to pass laws, to build up their medical care. So people actually use child mortality as to how well off a country is. And there's actually, I just looked at this statistic. I think it's about 15 dead out of every 1,000 births. And it's actually not bad. I mean, it's higher than it should be. It's about double than it should be. But compared to Africa and Afghanistan, where it's dozens, 50, I think, is the highest I've seen. But it's pretty good. But again, a lot of this is refugee, and they just, there's hospitals can't always give free programs to take care of the children. And, again, the poverty plays a big part in it. However, children are valued more in Bulgaria than, say, Africa, where they don't even really name the babies until a year or two. Some places in Africa that happens, and also some places in South America, we learned. And that isn't quite the case in Bulgaria. So that's also a good thing. And then the fifth is improved maternal health, and this is mothers, and sometimes women in general, but it does focus on mothers, and especially pregnant and nursing mothers. And let's see here. From what I read, the biggest trouble that women run into is is actually cervical cancer. And it's something of an STD because you can get shots for it, and I think, even here they go around saying, hey, make sure your teenagers get it, or make sure you get it before you become sexually active. Mm-hmm. So that's, should we check the recording just to make sure it's still recording? I'm sorry.
Yeah, we can do that.
Still good?